All right, Ajaz, I think we're good to go. We're good to start.
Sure, Vipul.
All right, great. All right, so a very good morning to each one of you. Thank you for joining us. Thanks, all our viewers. So, the next 45 minutes, we have a very wonderful guest with us with whom we're going to dwell deep into the entire ecosystem of EV charging, energy storage, currently the situation in India. So let me just give you a quick update on the guest today that we have, Mr. Anand Nahata, who's the managing director of Exicom Group. Now, for those of who do not know Exicom, they were founded in 1994, and I think they operate in primarily three major sectors. One of them being telecom, the other being green mobility, and the third being energy storage. Now, we've seen some major, uh, you know, work being done by Exicom Group currently with that. I mean, with the tie-up they've had with Bounce for deploying their efficient charging solutions, for tying up with Kinetic Green on deploying batteries for three-wheelers. So I think Exicom has truly, been working in the domain where their technology and quality is global, but definitely the price, which is local, right? So with that, I think welcome Anand to this industry trailblazers. It's going to be a one-to-one chat where we, for our viewers, pick up some of the most touched upon topics. Uh, Now, Anand, I'd like to have your first take on how has the entire COVID situation impacted you as an individual and Exicom as a company, and then EV sector.
So first of all, hi to everyone. Thank you, Vipul, for the wonderful introduction. And as I would have imagined, everything starts with COVID, right? That's it's funny how probably no conversation we do today is without pandemic. And even if we try to do something different, like it's 1 degree of separation, and soon we are back on this again. But you're right, it has impacted probably every business. But with respect to us and EV, and I think this has been widely publicized all over media globally. But the sight of clear skies and quiet streets have resulted in more and more consumers looking towards conserving the environment, going more sustainable, going more green, and a lot of companies as well who were just looking for hyper growth earlier are now looking at sustainable business models, to which EV is an answer for a lot of them. And this is not just in India, this is a global phenomena, like from US to Europe. We see sales of e-bikes and electric cars rising, and then the market valuation of those companies rising. Uh, and these societal benefits combined with economic benefits makes a good case for electric vehicles. Yes, COVID pandemic came as a surprise, no doubt about that. And in short term, it's a shock for everyone, including our company. There is dip in sales. There is delays of projects of many of our customers. But in medium to long term, it's positive. So some of our customers whose deployment only had a fraction of EVs in their portfolio now have gone fully electric, for future. MG, which launched ZS, I hear that they've gotten more than 3,000 bookings, which is more than overall EV sold last year. A lot of last mile delivery companies actually taking actions to go electric with an aim of converting 20 to 50% of their fleet into electric over the next 18 to 24 months. And there are many more such examples. So while we have to tide over short-term crisis, but I'm extremely positive about electrification in medium to long term.
Great. So, Anand, have you seen an overall increase in the demand post COVID in terms of the users moving towards a more conscious decision, or has it been a more of a safety reason that they might as well prefer that transition?
So in absolute terms, obviously the whole economy has shrunk, and so has the electric vehicle. But when you compare relative, so I think, for example, the two-wheeler segment decreased only by 20% compared to north of 50-60% for the IC vehicles. Relative perspective, it has not been hit as hard, right? So yes, I would say it has performed much better than the traditional conventional segments. And as I said previously, in short term, yes, there will be pain and there is issues with the disposable incomes and employments and all that stuff. So, but in medium to long term, I think whether it's the industry, businesses, consumers, they will move towards electric because they find it more sustainable and it has societal benefits.
Okay. Now, Anand, you've been, I think Exicom has been one of the forerunners when it comes to battery swapping as a technology. Now, this is one of the most talked about points. And, earlier we used to meet everyone in conferences, which was more informal. You could get their individual perspective. I think on these platforms now, it's really crucial to understand how is battery swapping as a technology compared to EV charging infrastructure setting up, and how do the OEMs or the fleet operators look at these two technologies? Do you think it complements each other? Do you think they are competing technologies, or what's the future for you on these two?
Yeah, no, I think great question. In fact, if you met me maybe 2 years ago, I had only negative things to say about battery swapping. So a lot of my own perspective has changed over the last couple of years, and that's what's amazing about technology, right? Like the development, the pace at which things are changing is just amazing. So I definitely think it's complementary. Rather, I would say it really depends on the application. So there are applications which require more than 100 kilometers, 120 kilometers of vehicle running per day, where you cannot afford too much downtime. And in those applications, battery swapping is very healthy. Battery swapping as a service is very healthy. Yes, there is a secondary benefit of reduction in capex and partly converting that capex into service. But the main reason, the main applications where battery swapping really works is where you cannot afford charging downtime. So that's why the main areas we see these picking up are deliveries, especially like food delivery and some of the last mile delivery, where you have to execute orders in 1 hour, 45 minutes, depending on business models of the company. These are picking up in shared mobility segment where there is no organized charging to begin with, right? So some of the models where there is dockless bike sharing, so people can pick up the bike from anywhere, leave it anywhere. There, at least to my knowledge, no other business model can work except battery swapping. So that's a very interesting area. And generally, I think with the rise of electrification in B2B, swapping definitely has a big role to play. It's to be seen whether in B2C segment where consumers have their own personal demand of 30, 40, 50 kilometers, will this pick up or not? And then, we'll know in future, but depends on the application. Whereas on the other side, if the application only requires 50, 60 kilometers a day, you could do swapping, but in my opinion, it's more expensive. So that's where fixed batteries work better. Also, swapping we generally see in the light electric vehicles. It could be done in cars, etc., but it's very complex, and ability to standardize the battery in that segment is not easy. So at least I've been proven wrong many times before, but at least we feel this is going to be more of a phenomena in two-wheelers, three-wheelers, and maybe not upwards of that.
I think that the comment which you made about you being, 2 years ago, absolutely pro. I think that defines our tagline as champions of change, which is how I think we learn on this sector what works, and it's a very evolving technology. I'm sure that by if we by the end of next year we will see a lot of new coming in. There's a lot of discussions going around how the hydrogen fuels as such, especially in the European countries, right? Now, besides being in this sector, there's a lot now current, with the recent developments that we are seeing being spoken about, local for vocal for local, right? Now, you also represent one of the largest Indian OEMs in terms of you have your manufacturing plant. I think in Gurgaon you have two of them. We've seen a very sudden rise in terms of demand for the lithium-ion batteries over the years. How are you prepared for this demand in terms of both manufacturing capabilities as well as import of the raw materials? These two elements, and you could also give a larger perspective for the other manufacturers which exist as to what is a real winning strategy.
Yeah. Vipul, I'll answer that, but I think there is some breakage in your voice. I'm not sure whether it's only on my side, but you may want to just check it in the meantime. So,
I'll do.
yeah, so absolutely not just for batteries. I think in the last 1 month there has been this thing about vocal for local for practically every industry, and then we play some part in telecom and other industries. We have seen a lot of it over there as well. But yes, EV is a new industry, and there has been a lot of talks in government quarters. We don't want to go the same way of solar, where there is a lot of uptake, but domestic industry doesn't even account for 10% of that. And we, as a company, we have taken some lead in that. And when I talk about vocal for local, it's, people confuse sometimes this only for manufacturing. Yes, manufacturing is a very big part of it, but it really starts from all the way of design, engineering, IP ownership, how you control the product, manufacturing, and after sales. And I'm happy to say, at least at Exicom, when it comes to battery, we do control the entire value chain from design to deployment of these batteries. Probably almost all the IP in the battery, whether it's BMS, the thermal engineering or balance of system, is something which we design grounds up at our R&D center in Bangalore. We have a manufacturing plant where we buy the cells and the whole packing is done over here. Now, battery packing is not a complicated thing, right? Like you'll sometimes see many, it doesn't take too much money, and you can have setups all the way from 5 crore of investments to 100 crore of investments to set up a battery plant. But the key in battery is to really make consistent batteries. To make batteries is not rocket science. A lot of people can do it. It takes a couple of months of learning, some investments, and doing it. But the key is making consistent batteries. That's what we are focusing on. However, whether we like it or not, today cells form majority of the bill of material of a battery. That is not there in India, for which we have to depend on external countries. A lot of that is from China. Yes, there is Korea, there is Japan, but a lot of it comes from China. And in this COVID situation, in this pandemic situation, where there was a sudden disruption in supply chain, I think that was a big wake-up call for everyone, especially the government, to come out with policy framework very fast so people can invest in cell manufacturing in India. So while there is, I think while we will see an increasing amount of value addition for batteries in India, which goes in the whole value chain, as I said, designing, engineering, manufacturing over the next 2 years. But I don't, until we have cell manufacturing in India, I don't see ourselves to be independent at all. So hopefully that happens in near term.
So what's your bet? Is it on lithium-ion batteries? Or do you think lead acids are the past, or are you waiting for a better technology to come?
Well, I don't know about lead acid versus. I don't know too much about lead acid period, so I never take that as a competing argument. But listen, when it comes to electric vehicles, just because of sheer requirement of space density and life and the charge rates, etc. I think lithium-ion just wins hands down. On the stationary side, yes, there are many more competing technologies where for different applications, a lot of technologies can fit, even including lead acid. There have been many talks about evolution of batteries, and we read about solid state batteries, we read about million mile battery. There is a lot of talk about hydrogen fuel cell based vehicles, and a lot of them have had pilots across the world. A lot of these technologies are under development. So yes, we really feel sometime between 2025 to 2030, more likely towards 2030, there will be a shift in the technologies which we are dealing with today.
All right. Now, Anand, what comes to your mind when we use the word PV plus EV? How do you look at this? Because like I mentioned at the beginning, energy storage, the integration of solar to the EV. How do you look at the entire integration from your point of view?
Okay, so great question. So I don't know if I think about it as integration, but the real, I mean, there are two sides of the story. On one hand, you have the grid where renewable is increasingly taking a larger share in our economy. And if I'm correct, I don't think there has been any new thermal plant which has come up in India over the last 2 3 years. And as the economics now prove, there will not be any new thermal plant coming up in India in future. So renewable is going to take a bigger share in the Indian economy. 175 gigawatts or 30-40% of the Indian generations. In fact, a lot of our coal plants are now more than 25-40 years old, which anyways have to be replaced. So this transition will only fasten. And on the other hand, now you have large consumers of grid, EVs being one of them. So at a high level, when you see them together, you really have something which is totally sustainable, renewable, and cars getting charged by renewables, so they have very little or zero carbon footprint, and that is just economically it's good independently when you look at these business models, and together it's like 1 plus 1 being 4 instead of 2.
Yeah, I think so. So we have two permutation combination. One is 1 plus 1 being 4, 11, or you actually have 1 plus 1 also being 0, 1 minus 1, right? So that's a way to look at this. Now, we've seen a huge business opportunity which has currently seen in India by a lot of battery makers, especially on the assembly side, right? Now, do you see that business being disturbed, maybe on a short term, or also on the long term? Do you see the entire assembly business in India being disturbed because of COVID? The other situations around it.
Disturbed because of I didn't get that word.
So disturbed because, first of all, of the entire, the political angle of what's going on because of that, and also with some larger OEMs starting manufacturing in India. Do you see assembling is not going to be a more sustainable model for India SMEs?
Yeah. Again, a great question, and there has been. I can answer this from looking at this question from 3 different ways, right? First of all, when you take the case of OEMs, yes, there are certain OEMs maybe who are interested in controlling this part of the value chain, and some of the business may be done by them. But unlike engines, where beyond a point is just material plus processing. If you achieve a volume, a threshold of volume, you're fine. Batteries is not something like this, right? If an OEM is going to do this, they really got to think of themselves as a battery company and not just having supply chain in-house. even if we look at like the world's biggest example, like Tesla, while their main business is cars, that's 90% of their business. But today their batteries go with solar, with at home, at large scale farms, and even commercial and industrial. So a part of their organization really thinks of Tesla being a battery company, and maybe there's a bigger part which thinks of it being an automotive company. So it's not as easy as it seems, that okay, this is a big component, I'm just going to take it in-house. Now that learning, that having said that, it doesn't mean somebody cannot do it, but this is an element which makes a case for really strong battery suppliers to coexist with the OEM. That's what I'm probably pointing at. So even if we look at Europe today, Daimler gets most of their packs, while they have in-house pack manufacturing, but a lot of their packs come from third-party battery assembly companies. The second way to look at this is, assembly is just like, let's say, a transaction. We got to really define what our value proposition to the customer is, and those are the people who will exist in this overcrowded market. So is it really like the way you build the pack and the consistency of the pack? Is it BMS? Is it something else? I don't know. It may be different for different companies. It may be cost for some people. It may be safety for some people. But we got to really define our value proposition, and if that clicks with your customer, it's good. The third element is, when we look at OEMs today, we are plagued by the thought that, okay, OEM means Bajaj, TVS, HMCL, Honda, maybe one or two more, right? Like those 5, 6 names really cover 90% of the market share in the country. But we don't know how the landscape will look 5 years later, but we do know one thing for sure: the market is going to be more fragmented. Whether some of today's startup become big, whether some of new people come. So the market itself is, when it gets more fragmented, the possibility of battery assembly companies to coexist in a fragmented market is larger than today's scenario, where market is governed by 5 people. It may be 15 or 20 people after 5 years, right? And again, that's a phenomena that we have seen everywhere across the world. Last point is, it's today the market is only driven by OEM, and this is again a case which remains to be seen how it evolves in future. But a lot of decisions today about battery powertrains are being made by end customers as well. So today, if I want to buy a bike, I have these catalog, these companies. I have no option but to buy something from that catalog. But going forward, and in fact, some of our customers as well, who are using our batteries, it was the end customers who have made those decisions and used their clout or volume or whatever it is to let's say customize the powertrain, OEM's powertrain as per their requirement. So with this view, the market gets even more fragmented. So I think, summary, the market is large. There are various forces which define the business relationship between the various players in the ecosystem. And there is possibly going to be space for everyone to play as long as your value proposition is very clear.
Right. Great. Now, to take a more macro view on manufacturing in India. Now, with the recent discussions about manufacturing in India, I think what a lot of people have failed to realize or probably give more value to is the kind of competencies any manufacturing economy needs to bring in. Right now, a lot of people, have a mindset that it's only because manufacturing is cheap in China or Vietnam or Southeast Asian countries. But I think a lot more than just price goes into making a manufacturing economy. That's your entire mindset, the workforce, which is built over years, right? Now, do you think we have that in us to become? Can India take that stand very quickly to becoming a manufacturing hub, or is it going to be a win-win and a sustainable partnership over time where we learn, deploy, and then make that transition happen?
Yeah. Okay. So no, really, really good question. And I'll probably start with my visit to Vietnam. This last New Year's, I was in Vietnam. I've never been there before. I know very little about Vietnam except its capital city. And on my way to the airport, the hotel driver and one of the hotel persons who could speak English was dropping me to the airport. And that lady said to me, do you know we do more exports than India? I'm like, that's such a weird statement, right? Like, it's not about like a sports game that we beat you or we did this. Or it's so the pride that those people have in the way economy has developed, it's amazing. And I was shocked to know that a country of 60 million or something like that, or maybe even lesser, is doing more exports than a country of a billion people, which is, and it's all electronics, etc. And probably the biggest consumers of those products is in India. The reason I took this example, yes, all this happened for that country in 5-6 years, but this I won't agree that this has to be like a serial approach. This has to be a resolved by a country at policy level, government level, a lot of regulation which supports this. And I think we have like amazing number of entrepreneurs, companies who are willing to take the challenge and leap into this. And this has to coexist with development of the end market. So and government has to make sure that the both both the things, both the engines run in parallel. I've never seen an example where we have been able to make a big market and then try to catch up with manufacturing later. It just doesn't happen because you're already then 10 years behind the latest technology, manufacturing processes, etc., etc.
All right. Now, Arun, what kind of innovations do you see in the world of batteries?
Innovations. Okay, so I don't know if I'm the right person to answer this particular question, but over the next, I mean, I can give you like a business perspective on this, if not a technical perspective. But in the last 3 years, what we have seen is uh, is batteries becoming very, very cost competitive, right? And that has been possible due to incremental development of technologies, which have led to higher energy density. So we had something we call as NCM 111, which is equivalent amount of nickel, cobalt, and manganese, to something which we have, which we call as 811 now, which has much higher proportion of nickel compared to manganese and cobalt. And all this has increased the energy density, kept the material cost the same. Therefore, the prices of batteries have really come down and energy density has increased, which in other layman's word is in the same space, I can fit double the energy at the same cost, right? So technically batteries cost have halved. And this is something which probably will continue over the next 2-3 years. Post 25 to 30, again, my knowledge is as good as anyone. There has been a lot of development on solid state batteries, because there is talk that the current batteries, which will reach its theoretical limit of energy densities in maybe very near future. So what's next in battery? Probably solid state, which again increase the envelope of advancements which is possible. And then there are alternative technologies, specifically like, let's say, hydrogen fuel cell. That's an area we have been doing a little bit of research out of our curiosity. And there have been a lot of pilots across the globe, particularly in heavy duty vehicles, which is the obvious place to deploy hydrogen fuel cell based technology. So yeah, that's something which may even come in India in years to come. And there are a couple of other alternative technology like metal air batteries, etc., where people are working on. Which one is going to take the prominent place? I don't know. But yes, over the next 10 years, I think the battery advancements, whatever we saw in the last decade, will probably have a similar pace of technology development in the next decade as well.
All right, great. Now I think we've covered sort of some of the most interesting points on EV charging, batteries, storage as such. Now I'm going to try and understand, how a leader thinks especially in this industry. Now, what I want to know from you, Anand, when you saw businesses, really getting affected. Exicom is also one of the largest solution providers or technology companies that exist. What was your first approach? Did you want to sit back, relax, think what's happening? Were you observing other organizations? Were you thinking of reinventing the entire value chain? What was your approach in coming out of the entire pandemic which took place?
Yeah. So okay. So, so I think the first thing over here is the support of your teams, right? Like I don't think any person is in leader individually, and I'm really glad the way at least our teams came together and fought for whether it's business, or ongoing projects and work was really commendable. And a lot of those efforts actually shape up what you would, how you turn out of like a mess, which we call as a pandemic. But just again, from a high level thought, just from a business perspective, what was in my mind is uh, there are always two sides of coin, right? As I said before, uh, disruptions like this, and we have seen disruptions before. Yes, the only difference is this was much more sudden and shocking. This makes certain companies stronger, like we have seen Geo, right? It's which is just an amazing story. But it makes maybe some of the smaller companies who don't have fundings, their plans maybe get delayed. So one of our main focus was to work with companies who share the same vision in electrification, because those are the companies who are not going to backtrack from their original idea or vision. Yes, 50 crore plan may become a 30 crore plan, and stuff like that may happen. Some of the stuff may get delayed, but it's really important to work with people, with companies who share the same vision in electrification. And that, I think, probably is going to pay us off over the medium term. Yes, in short term, as I said in the beginning, there are challenges for everyone, which range from funding to supply chain to making complete products. But if you stick with customers who really have electrification journey as a goal, as a vision, something which is approved by their board and company, I think you'll come out of it. So that was at least our idea, in terms of the customers. The second was how we can service these companies during pandemic, right? Because it was a shock for them also. And there are things which probably they didn't think about in terms of servicing of the batteries, or how to keep them alive and charge, how to monitor them remotely. So there were all those things were not, let's say, the most important topics of discussions earlier. So another thing which we did was to work with some customers and figure this piece out, which really helped them. So yeah, broadly I would say, and third, I think you got to, there's no fixed idea, fixed rule, so you got to just work as a team together and figure things out.
All right, great. Okay, so I think in this next about 5 minutes, I think we'll try and see if we've got some interesting questions that I can put across to you. So the first question I think is from Mr. Sandeep. He would like to understand if Exicom has decided anything about the fast charging deployment in India, and if you have a certain milestone to it.
Okay, so no, so see, we Exicom is a product company. We have been into fast charging space for almost 12, I think almost 2 years now. We have deployed fast chargers for various companies, including OEMs, some of the CPOs, charge point operators, utilities, and we continue to advance our product portfolio. And I think in just NCR and some couple of other cities, the 2, 3 top metros, you will see more than 200 of our charging stations being deployed. The charge point operator is one of the government companies from whom we won the contracts. So yes, when you talk about deployment, we are only a product company. We partner with the end user, which may be a CPO, utility, real estate, whatever, to deploy these. And I'm happy to share that you will see, I think, more than at least more than 250 chargers of ours in the next 3-4 months.
Okay. All right. Now, I think we've got a lot of statistic questions which people have asked here. I'm just going to read them out to you. Okay, feel comfortable to answer or skip based on that. So one is, how many lithium-ion battery manufacturers do you think exist in India, and how many do you think would remain or sustain themselves? Another one is, what's the demand, or what's by 2025, what do you see the market size of lithium-ion batteries in India? Right. So I think these are two questions if you would like to just pick up, because I'm not sure if those are very relevant, but it's up to you. How you?
Well, on size, I think it's crystal ball gazing, and there have been a lot of reports, including from ISA, etc., but which kind of give us the latent demand in the industry, which means that yes, if the price points are right, manufacturing ecosystem is right, customers are investing, then potentially there may be if I remember the number correctly, was 40 or 50 gigawatt hours by 2030. Could be a market which could develop for lithium ion. How it really transforms every year depends on so many factors, and that's where people like us and many other companies are working to make sure we push the envelope, we push that market, and we have a pie of that market. But I couldn't possibly probably give a real number to that extent. How many lithium-ion assembly people are there? How many will remain? I hope many for both these questions. Again, I don't know a number, but my only advice would be the people who are able to make this consistently good are the people who are going to remain. It's yes, partly it's about technology, cost, people, investments, but I think a lot of it has to do with making this consistently well, doing this consistently well. Today, even in the worldwide, I think there are more than thousands of lithium-ion cell manufacturers, but it's surprising that 4 companies dominate 85% of the market. So everybody else, some number of players between 1,000 and 2,000 only play in the 15% market, right? So, and yeah, maybe I don't think the battery assembly is more fragmented. Of course, it's not like this 85-15, and probably we'll see that in India. But let's see. Hopefully, it's many for both.
All right. We've got one question from Mr. Swapnil. I think we'll put this as a last question. What are some of the barriers which you think that Hexacom as a company may encounter when there is a change in the consumer behavior?
Well, so we are hoping for change in consumer behavior. So that is something which is probably good for us, because here the consumer behavior is towards IC ecosystem is the main ecosystem. So I'm assuming when you say change in behavior, it can only be towards electrification. Yeah, partly there is some talks about how public transport and electrification does one take away market from the others, or both coexist, or both are complementary to each other. But leaving that topic aside, a change in consumer sentiment is good for electrification. And as I said in the beginning, sight of clear skies and quiet streets is already leading a change in this consumer sentiment. In fact, I got a couple of friends who don't give a damn about electrification, but just out of this let's say loving nature or sustainability, have got an electric car, the MG ZS. So you see this around, and hopefully this multiplies and is good for the whole ecosystem. Then at least it's a good problem to solve. Like barrier maybe having the right product, right technology, right cost, right manufacturing, but then that's a good problem to solve.
Absolutely. I think there are some questions which I'm going to skip because of the paucity of time. But I think just so that to set a final a concluding remark on this, I think businesses definitely have adapted to what's happening. We ourselves, Anand, if you know, we used to execute approximately about 50 to 60 physical conferences every year, following our other publishing vertical, research, etc. But I think with the COVID, the entire MICE industry has been one of the most adversely affected, right? And a lot of conferences, networking. So I think the same approach was deployed at our end is to first of all work with companies who, I could see that synergy is to work with companies who understand, because when this happened first, there were a lot of companies who were just on standstill, absolutely nothing. They just wanted a 3-month break, no activities, no discussion, just to absorb everything that took place around them. So I think it's definitely very important to have like-minded partners with you in these times. A team for sure, and I think kudos to all the people who are out there who are listening to us from various organizations, who've been working, who may have been affected. I think this sector is definitely going to rise. There are no doubts about that. So I think with this, I'd like to first thank Anand for giving your time on this discussion. There are some points which we could not get deeper into or dwell further, but I'm sure our viewers have learned a lot on this. We'll also be putting these videos up on our studio online where you can watch it. They'll be available on LinkedIn handles. So I think for everyone who's missed or who has more questions, feel free, and we'll try and give you more comprehensive insight on this. So with this, I think Anand, thank you. Maybe a final thought from your side for all the viewers who will watch you or maybe post the session who will be watching you. A final thought from your side.
So I know it's been really great talking to everyone. I guess I think all the viewers over here have definitely some or the other interest in electric mobility. So my guidance to all the companies, entrepreneurs, even on LinkedIn, I keep getting message of some small entrepreneurs to sometimes even large companies. I know these look to be tough times, but I think follow your gut, and I think this is probably I'm not saying this is the best thing which could have happened. It's the worst thing which could have happened for everyone, but it's a good thing for electrification. And as they say, it's always darkest before dawn. I really believe in that. So if we have a strategy to pass the next 2, 3, 4 months, to sustain the next 3, 4 months, you will come out stronger. That's one. And second, sometimes I often say this, and I've been involved in some e-commerce business earlier, etc. People always take these big change as very short-term markets. Like everybody wants to grow and do something in 6 months, 1 year, 1.5 months, as if like there is no life after that. This is a very, very long market, and I'm saying this from making errors myself. So the idea is to do things in a sustainable way. So whether it's your plans, your scale-up plans, your customer scale-up plan, align with people who are like-minded and do things in a sustainable way, which suits your risk and reward appetite, because this market is not really going anywhere. So yeah, that would be it. And
All right. So I think for our viewers, one of a very you know a good thought to end this, which I heard and I really liked it, which I like to share. For a lot of business owners or top leaders, is never waste a good crisis situation, right? So that's what I'm going to leave you with. Thank you all of you for joining us. We will be putting this post the session if, on our various channels. Thank you, Anand, once again for giving us your time. And with this, we officially conclude. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Vipul. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, sir.